In the shadow of colonial rule, another older chain of oppression bound millions in the grip of an unjust social order. At its heart lay a book that defined the hierarchy, sanctioned discrimination, and justified inequality for centuries. This book was the Manusmriti. Dr Babasaheb Ambedkar, a man of unyielding courage and conviction, stood up to challenge this deep-rooted injustice. To him, Manusmriti was more than a book. It was the blueprint of oppression, the manual of untouchability. He knew that to spark a revolution, the Manusmriti had to burn. On the 25th of December, 1927, a day etched in history, Dr Ambedkar and his followers gathered in Mahad to light a fire, not just of flames, but of rebellion. Manusmriti, the symbol of oppression, met its end in the bonfire of justice. To understand this, we must go back to March 1927 during the historic Mahad Satyagraha, led by Dr Babasaheb Ambedkar. This movement aimed to assert the basic right of the Dalit community to access public water resources. The Satyagraha was carried out peacefully and successfully. However, soon after, the participants were attacked by upper caste individuals in a sudden and brutal assault, catching them off guard. Mahad stood on the brink of chaos. The assault on the Satyagrahis, led by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, had enraged the oppressed community. Among them were battle-hardened veterans of World War I, men who had faced death on foreign soil. Their patience had worn thin, and they were ready to retaliate. A bloodbath seemed inevitable, one that could have forever altered the course of history. Dr. Ambedkar's leadership averted a massacre that day, reminding his people that their fight was not just for water, but for equality and justice. With great restraint, the Satyagrahis turned away from retaliation, embodying the principles of their struggle. The upper castes, blind to their own cruelty, declared the Chavdar Lake polluted by the touch of Dalits. In an act of mockery, they purified it with cow dung, cow urine, and milk. For the depressed classes, this act was more than an insult. It was a wound inflicted upon their very existence. This so-called purification lacerated the hearts of the oppressed. For Dr. Ambedkar, it was a moment of reckoning. He realized that education and reforms alone could not cure this deeply entrenched disease. A drastic remedy was needed, a bold step to challenge centuries of oppression. Had the caste Hindus admitted the right of the depressed classes to use the tank, this satyagraha would not have been necessary. Unfortunately, the caste Hindus here are obstinate in their attitude and refuse to recognize our rights. This public tank is open to everyone, including Mohammedans and other non-Hindus, yet the so-called untouchables are prohibited from accessing it. Ironically, cattle owned by the untouchables are allowed to drink from the tank, but their owners, who are just as human as everyone else, are denied this basic right. The Hindu community remains trapped in the steel framework of the caste system, a hierarchy that imposes privileges and disabilities on each caste. The so-called caste Hindus fear losing their superiority and oppose equality, not because they truly believe the water will be defiled, but because they dread the idea of sharing the same social status as us. We are not fighting for the water itself. We are fighting to establish our natural rights as citizens and as human beings. Some might say we should only aim for the abolition of untouchability and leave the caste system intact. But even if untouchability is abolished, what would our status be? At best, we would be relegated to the position of Shudras. And what rights do Shudras have? The Smritis dictate that Shudras are mere zealots, devoid of dignity and equality. Are you prepared to accept this status? Are you willing to leave your fate in the hands of the upper castes? Ours is not just a struggle to remove our disabilities, it is a movement for social revolution. A revolution that aims to break all man-made barriers of caste, establish equality, and provide everyone with the opportunity to rise to their fullest potential. If we succeed in uniting all Hindus under one caste, we will render the greatest service to the Indian nation. The current caste system, with its inhuman distinctions, is one of the greatest sources of our communal and national weakness. Our movement stands for equality, liberty, and fraternity. We wish to remain peaceful, but our resolve to do so depends on the attitude of our opponents. We refuse to be bound by the Shastras and Smritis of the Dark Ages and instead base our claims on justice and humanity. The burning of the Manusmriti was more than just an act of defiance. It was a foundational step toward building a new India. An India where equality, justice, and liberty are not just ideals, but rights guaranteed to every citizen by the Constitution of India, written under the visionary leadership of Dr Babasaheb Ambedkar. Because of his relentless efforts, Dalits now have access to education, employment, and representation in governance. Women, too, enjoy greater rights and freedoms, from equal pay to the right to vote, paving the way for their empowerment in all walks of life. The burning of the Manusmriti was not just about rejecting oppression. It was about embracing a future built on justice and humanity. It was an act that laid the groundwork for a modern, inclusive India